Happy to see you all. So we just think we're going to be here for this little hour just to think about using Buddha's view of the world, using Buddha's view as our reference to try and help us know how to navigate daily life, That's it, really. So whether your daily life is on death row in prison, or whether it's in a luxurious house in the, in the mountains, or whether you're in a cave, doesn't matter. It's the same job. This is what's interesting. The external world is one thing, but the job is the mind. This is Buddha's expertise. So we think, that's why we're here together, thinking, and why are we going to do this? So we can develop our own amazing potential. Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, we can mold our mind into any shape we like. That's just so delicious, And that's the essence of what Buddhism is. So we're doing this for this little hour to see if we can get some tools from this, even if 1% of what I say is useful. So happy, So, okay. I was thinking one of the things that feels so hard for us, is that we hear all these words, we hear the Buddha's teachings, and then we really get it very down to earth. The concept of what the Buddha is saying is what practice is really very simple. Learn to understand what you're thinking, learn to identify the thoughts that are neurotic and ridiculous and unhappy and miserable, distinguish them from the positive, virtuous, useful thoughts, stop following the negative ones and try and follow the good ones. I mean, it's a really simple concept, and it's important to know that. We make it sound as if the technique itself is difficult. It's not. But then we have to ask, why is it difficult? It's only difficult because we are addicted to the wrong way of doing it. We're addicted to following the unhappy thoughts. We mightn't always think that. And we don't, and the trouble is, because they seem so set in stone, this is the main problem. They feel so real. Look when you're even slightly depressed. Look when you're even slightly anxious. Look when you're even slightly angry. Forget about the really intense emotions. It's like absolute concrete truth, isn't it? This is the essential point. This is why it is so difficult. The technique itself is not difficult. It's like learning math. You begin with knowing no math, and you've got a good brain, and you listen to your teacher, you go home and you memorize it, and you change, listen to this, you change your thoughts basically from not knowing math, from ignorance, to knowing math. It doesn't take long at all, because we've got a clever mind. But so you'd think, well, it'd be just as easy. Well, I should stop thinking negative thoughts and stop believing negative thoughts and try and think loving thoughts. It's just the same principle, but it's a billion times more difficult. It's sort of like, and this is part of the problem. No, it's sort of like you're completely convinced that, that not knowing maths is completely absolute set in stone. And you hear 1 + 1 is 2, and you just can't hear it. You just cannot hear it. Or it seems it's impossible. I can't possibly think that. How could I think 1 + 1 is 2? That's how we think. How could I possibly have a loving thought instead of an angry thought, It's because the thoughts are so entrenched. And this is the thing, the Buddha's view about karma, which, many people don't think about. It's very specific to Buddhism, and it's a very detailed description in the texts. And it actually comes from these amazing Indians well before the Buddha. We're learning about this these days in the modern world. We knew nothing earlier. Who knows about anything about Indian philosophy? Nobody, but now these days we are. And it's been more than 3,000 years. As Dalai Lama I always quote him. It's these Indians, these amazing Indians, more than 3,000 years ago, who are the ones who really began the investigation into the nature of self. And we're now learning more about this. But as even they were the ones who came up with this, these marvelous techniques in Buddhism. The Buddhism that Buddha took with him when he diverged in his own direction. This concentration technique. The so-called meditation technique, this ability to concentrate the mind, because that's what you have to learn to do. If you go home and you've listened to your math teacher tell you 1 + 1 is 2, and she says, go home and do your homework. What she wants you to do is get home, sit in your desk, concentrate for a little bit, stay focused, and then you'll memorize, and you'll become familiar with that concept. Now, if you can't concentrate, you can't do anything. If you can't keep your mind for more than 1 second on one thing, you are a disaster. So concentration meditation, don't think of it as holy. It's not. It's a practical psychological skill. You need it to do anything, You need it to do anything. So why we want to do it here, why we want to learn to concentrate our mind, is so we can use that focus to identify what's in the mind. So the other reason it's so difficult to do this job of distinguishing between the unhappy, neurotic, ridiculous thoughts and the valid, reasonable, positive thoughts, because that really, truly, not kidding, is the essence of being a Buddhist. This is a fact, We get it so complicated. Oh, what's a Buddhist? Oh, you wear robes, you've got to have a bald head, you've got to do this, you've got to prostrate, you've got to do this, all this stuff. No, that's stuff that supports our practice. The actual practice, as Lama Yeshe puts it, being your own therapist. So if the actual job is to recognize the neurotic thoughts, see how they don't have a valid basis, and then to try and follow the good thoughts, trying to change your thoughts from not knowing to knowing, 1 + 1 is 2. You've got to get some concentration first. That's obvious, necessary. That's why a little technique in the morning, a bit of focusing meditation can be useful. But the other reason it's so difficult, the other reason that really makes it extra difficult to do this job of identifying the neuroses and distinguishing between those and the virtues, is that we have no intention, we have no wish to look at our mind. If you're angry, I'm having a fight with my boyfriend and he really is being mean, he cheated on me, and that's a fact. And we have a contract between us, don't we, that he doesn't cheat, and he did cheat. So it's a fact that he cheated. And I'm really upset and really angry. And then I hear that Buddha says that I could change my mind from anger to peaceful. I'm shocked. What are you talking about? Why should I? I'm allowed to be angry. He is the one who should change. So that's the second reason. And this is the massive one, why this job is so difficult, you know. Because we think it's the wrong place to look. What do you mean I should change? I'm allowed to be angry. Look what he did to me. Now, this is the one that's hard to unpack. This one is really difficult to unpack, to see the logic of. Buddha's saying we can change our mind. Buddha's simply saying we can change our mind. Nothing's set in stone. And anger is the mind. It's a lot of emotion, a lot of shouting. It's the body, but it's rooted in the mind, where it is a conceptual story. It's a viewpoint. It's an opinion. This is one of the key things when we study Buddhist philosophy and psychology in more depth, if we choose to. It's quite shocking initially, but it's a revelation when we can get it, that we live at the level of conceptuality. We know that if we're studying music or math, we know that's conceptuality. You're sitting there very peacefully and you're remembering all these complicated concepts. That's conceptuality. Yeah, but so is anger. So is love. So is compassion. What does that mean? This is a big surprise to us. And knowing this can help us do the job, at least want to do the job of not just looking at the boyfriend, but looking at my mind. And 2, distinguishing the anger from other positive thoughts. You know, this is really makes it extra helpful to understand this. And this view is unique to the Buddhist psychological model, quite unique. So when you hear that anger is conceptual, it sounds like a joke, doesn't it? So what do we mean by anger? You see a person shouting, yelling, spit coming out their mouth, eyes wide, you know? And what you're seeing is physical. You're seeing a person shout, noise coming out the mouth. The noise is pretty irrational. And the heart is beating, the blood is racing. So that's what we mean by an emotion. That's what we mean by, let's say in this case, anger. Now, another one of you people might not shout. You might have really disciplined behavior. Some people are like this, but you know. So let's say you're having angry thoughts about your boyfriend, but you're not showing it. Now, this is my point. This is the really crucial point we have to understand. That anger, the physical expression of anger, is just the body. It's just the body. Shouting is noise, blood, heart, eyes, tears. It's physical. That's not in its nature anger. This is so important. Anger is the thoughts that inform that physical behavior. This is the point that's sort of obvious if we point it out, but this is so clear in the Buddhist model, you know. So, and this is the point. A person who's very quiet, and we see them sitting there quietly, oh, she's a nice person. She doesn't get angry, but you can't see her thoughts. If she wrote down her angry thoughts, and let's say you recorded the angry shouting of the other person, you transcribe them. You'd have 2 pieces of paper, and anybody with half a brain could probably identify the words on the piece of paper of the quiet person are much more violent than the words on the piece of paper of the shouting person. Hear my point. This is proving the point, and it's not religion. This is fact. That anger is a series of concepts. Anybody looking at those pieces of paper, by looking at those words, you'll go, wow, this person's pretty crazy. You are evil. I hate you. I want to rip your guts out. It is obvious. What are those? They're words. What are words? Thoughts. This is hardly rocket science, but it feels like a revelation to us. Why? It's because we're so addicted to our body. Therefore, we're so addicted to our physical experiences. This is the other major obstacle. So the first reason why it's hard to do the simple job of changing your thoughts from angry to peaceful is because we don't even make that distinction. Second is because we don't even look at the thoughts, we look at the person and blame them. Why should I change? But third is because we don't understand what anger is. We don't have this analysis of the mind. We're so addicted to the body, and we think anger, emotions, emotions. We're so addicted to emotions. So we'll think of it as physical, which then is causing a fourth problem, or fifth, I'm losing count, of why it's difficult to do this job, is because I can't hear the thoughts behind the emotion. And also we don't look until it's emotional. This is the major problem. If you're sitting there watching your mind every day, doing the job of being a Buddhist, like Buddha's saying, observe your thought. What's going on? What's that noise? Like a bird singing. Can you hear a bird singing? I've got birds singing. It's in my computer. Come on. You can't hear birds singing?
That's better. Well, we hear birds, but I think it's from your side.
I don't have birds like that. I'm hallucinating. Okay, never mind. Well, don't worry. So the various problems why it's hard to do the job of being a Buddhist, the Buddha recommends. One, we don't even think there's a difference between, we don't, okay, I'll go to the main problem like we're talking here. The main problem is also because we're so addicted to our body, we identify oneself as the body. So therefore we don't notice what is happening in the mind before it gets to the body. That's when and this is one of the major problems why we all go crazy in the West, or why we want to kill ourselves, or why we want to kill our boyfriend, is because we wait until it's far too late. So we identify ourselves as the body. We don't notice anything until the body experiences it. That's why the person who let's say gets angry quietly, doesn't shout and yell, the person who doesn't shout and yell, let's say, that person won't notice what is going on in their mind until they want to kill themselves or their boyfriend. And they wake up one day, my God, what happened? I just killed somebody, because they don't pay attention. That's the tragedy. Now, the person who gets angry, who vomits out the words out their mouth, they won't notice they're angry until the words vomit out the mouth. And that's when it's too late. So lying in bed, inert with depression, is when you finally realize that something's going wrong. Or if you're an angry type person, a volatile one, then it's when you're vomiting out the words. This is too late. And why it's too late, why this is a problem is because we don't notice the mind until the body experiences something. That is the total tragedy. I'm going to have to cancel and come back.
Okay, I'm not sure what's happening with the noise, but please, everyone, mute yourselves. Make sure you are completely muted right now. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the problem, I use the analogy that it's like you've never heard of car mechanics. This is really a simple analogy, but it's a very good one. It's like you've got a brand new car and you've never heard of car mechanics. And so you don't notice, you're not listening to what's going on inside the car. You just concretely, this is a perfect car, it's a wonderful car, and you don't pay attention. So you don't notice when the wheels start to wobble. And then one day at 120 miles an hour on the freeway, you discover your wheels are falling off. That's us in our lives. So this is a symptom of the problem, because we don't realize the mind plays the main role in our lives, because we think it's the whole world. So we never look in the mind. We always look at the world. And then we think that when we do notice our mind, we're allowed to be angry because it's his fault. Then, because we are so addicted to our body, we only notice what's happening in our mind when the body feels it. I swear to you, this is major. And especially for some of you people who really, nothing wrong with this. The body, for some people, is very powerful, and it can be a good indicator of what is going on in your mind. And indeed, it is a good indicator. And look at a person shouting. It's a perfect indicator that they're angry. But the Buddha says, hey, babes, you've got to start seeing the anger before you get to the vomit. You've got to start seeing your mind before you get depressed. So we've got to go beyond the body. But we're so addicted to our body sometimes, addicted to our body, addicted to the feelings of our body. This is really misleading, actually. You can use your body. You can use these experiences, the sense of tension and those kind of things. You can use that as a help to get you to know your mind. That's the point. But finally, it's the mind. And what are all these thoughts? And what is these minds, these emotions? This is the part, they're all conceptual stories. Write them down on a piece of paper and you won't hear the shouting, but what you will see are these violent conceptual thoughts. This is so clear, that anger finally, or depression finally comes down to being conceptual thoughts, an elaborate conceptual story in our mental consciousness. This is exactly the Buddha's analysis, but with a little bit of thinking, we can prove it to be true. This is not religion. Don't be ridiculous. This is not belief. This is brilliant psychology. And this then tells us that we can change our mind. If you think that anger is just this physical feeling, how can I change anger? It's just natural. It's physical. Don't be ridiculous. Attachment's the same, This is even more hard. Like, especially people who have, you get very excited, especially if you're like a boy or something, you don't get that excited over cake, do you? But you get very excited over a new boy, let's say. And the physical feelings you experience are incredible, aren't they? These are the symptom of something going on in your mind. I'm sorry. It's a symptom of something going on in your mind, Boys especially. I don't want to get too personal, but boys especially, These physical indications of their desire is a pretty intense indication, right? But you think, oh, it's all physical, boys can't help it. Rubbish. Sure, you got things in your body that, the body does its trip. I have to be careful not to be too blunt. Get my point. What's causing that? Your mind, people. The mind of attachment that over-exaggerates, let's say, the deliciousness of, in this case, let's say, a girl shape. A girl shape. You've got addiction, you've got attachment to girl shape. There's all these thoughts in your mind that have been there since you're tiny, because of past karma. You've got this programming to have attachment to girl shapes. That's attachment. So it exaggerates the deliciousness of girl shapes. So when you see girl shapes, it seems like your body goes berserk. It does. But what causes the body to go berserk? Your mind, your attachment. This is definitely the Buddha's analysis, and it's most fascinating. We just think the body's got its own power, it's beyond thoughts. No, it's not beyond thoughts. It's programming of attachment in your mind. That's why your body does what it does. Now, it's true. It proves it. I mean, I'm going to use this example. I often tell this story. My friend Panos in Greece, years and years ago, he told me, he would tell me how he was, since a little boy, since a little tiny boy, his first experience of sexual pleasure. When he was 6, he was walking down the street in Athens with his Greek Orthodox mummy, his strict Greek Orthodox mummy, and Panos sees a poster outside a cinema of a half-naked lady. And he pipes up. I'm being very blunt here, so if you get embarrassed, you can close your ears. He pipes up in his little 6-year-old voice, "Oh, mummy, why is my penis standing up?" Of course, mummy's mortified, But the cinema lady cracked a joke about how he's going to be a lady killer. So he's 6 years old, people. He's never heard of girls before. That's because, in Buddhist view, he's programmed in his mind with the habit of being attached to girl shapes. So the moment his eyes see that shape, it triggers those tendencies, and his little body does its own trip. But listen to this. Let's say he gets older and he likes his girl shapes. But let's say when you give up that girl, this is the proof it's the mind, not the body. What happens to boys? Get my point? Like Paros. So when you hate that girl now, think about it. You can't stand the sight of that girl. She's mean, she's ugly now, she's cheated on you. I guarantee that thing will not stand up. Please hear my point. So what I'm getting at is it comes down to the mind. Anger is not just the physical, it's the expression of the mind. What the body does in terms of even that, what I just described, that's just the body, people. It's the mind that drives it. But because we're so programmed, we come into this life completely programmed with all these tendencies. And that's, again, a major reason why it's so hard to change. Because whatever we tend to feel, let's say anger, I mean, anger was always my problem since a little girl. The minute my attachment didn't get what it wanted, explosion. So I didn't sit there thinking it was choice. I didn't sit there thinking, oh, I think I'll get angry. Don't be ridiculous. Panos didn't sit there thinking, oh, I think I'll get my little thing to stand up. No. Because it's driven by habit, which is karma, and then your interpretation of it, which keeps it all going. So of course, we don't know why. I didn't know why as a little girl I got angry. My mother didn't teach me. She didn't have to. I knew how. And so because it was instinctive, as we'd say, For Panos, it was instinctive. We mean that in our culture. When it's instinctive, we think it is set in stone, absolute, unchangeable, concrete. So that's another reason why it's hard to do this job. There's layers of reasons, that make it unbelievably difficult to do the seemingly simple job of changing the mind from one thought to another. Because it's ancient habit, because we believe it's true, because we think it's completely concrete, we think it's absolute, we think it's real, unchangeable, and so anyway, we don't think we should change our mind because I'm not the problem, he's the problem, and then because we think it's the body and we don't notice until it gets to the body. So there's a half a dozen reasons why it is difficult to do this job of being your own therapist. So there's work to do, but it's doable. It's all there. The techniques are there, tried and tested for 2,500 years, So now you can ask me some questions. Come on. If you'd like. So all of it means we've got to be humble and patient because our trouble, sorry, I'll keep going. Because when we do start to see our mind, we have a panic attack. Oh my God, I couldn't believe I'm so angry. I'm so depressed. I can't cope. And then we freak out and we want it to go all the way. And then we hear about Buddhism. And we hear, oh, there's meditation. And then we think, oh, good, that'll fix it. And we have these absurd ideas that meditation is to make all the thoughts go away, or it's an alternative to a pill, or it's to have a vision, or some weird, bizarre idea, No, it's just hard work, that's all. Anything's hard work. Nothing changes overnight. Nothing changes overnight. But once you know there's a method, and once and it's slowly, you get courage just to keep practicing a little bit every day, a little bit every day. So are there any questions?
Venerable, there's a question in the chat.
Yes, good.
Are transsexuals programmed to another gender than they're born into?
Yeah, of course. You wouldn't do anything if you weren't programmed. We wouldn't do anything if we didn't have a tendency. We wouldn't even lift our finger to do anything if we didn't have tendencies in there. Why we like a girl shape, why we want a boy shape, why we're always dissatisfied with our cake, we always want to eat more, why we're dissatisfied with our boy shape and want to become a girl shape. Of course, it's all programming, people. Everything comes down to the same thing. It's not judgmental. It's not punitive. It's nothing like that. It's just everything we want to do is because we've got the habit. So it's more complex than that. It's more complex than that, clearly. This is why we have to learn to listen to our thoughts and feelings and emotions and begin to interpret them. And Buddhism got a very clear basis for that. And then we can decide if it's a valid thing to do that we feel we want to do. A person who wakes up in this life who wants to kill or torture. I mean, a friend of mine on death row in Kentucky, my Buddhist friend Mitchell tells me, I know this guy. He said, Robina, he thinks of torture all the time. So whether you think of loving all the time, whether you're kind all the time, whether you're angry all the time or a little bit, whether you want to be a boy instead of a girl, whether you're thinking about having sex with a boy instead of a girl, whatever it might be that goes on in your mind, it comes from your mind. Of course it does. Of course it does. Where else? Absolutely. So this is where it's not easy. We have to maybe we can't achieve what we want. But secondly, the other point is fundamental because all of this view in Buddhism is rooted in ethics. And what ethics means, don't hear this as kind of fundamentalism. For Buddhism, it's a natural law. What's labeled a negative action is one that is driven by attachment, anger, jealousy, and all the rest. Not in a punitive sense, because it'll cause you, no, it's because it will cause you suffering. Because the delusions have no basis in reality. They're frantic, they're I-based, they're fear-based, they're delusional, they're awful states of mind, not in a negative sense, but in a painful sense. We should have such compassion for ourselves when we see these negative states of mind. They cause us pain. So we have to distinguish between the things we want to do, whether it's want to, turn myself into a girl, whether I want to have 7 babies, whether I want to become a multimillionaire, whether I want to kill my father, whatever it might be. I've got to recognize what arises in my mind. But we don't like to do that because we're too scared of our mind. That's what we've got, and that's coming from the past, Buddha says, everything's our programming. We've got to recognize what's there, and then we've got to identify, is it valid or is it not? Valid means, is it based in virtue or is it based in non-virtue? We've got to decide. So that's the essence of being a Buddhist. Using Buddha's view of karma, which is this fundamental natural law, such that everything we think and do and say programs us and produces the person we become. The stuff that's driven by the neuroses and the fears and the dramas and the attachments and the anger and the anxiety and the despair, actions done on the basis of this could only cause us suffering and therefore harm others. And then actions done on the basis of reasonableness and kindness and generosity and forgiveness and love and reality will cause us happiness. It's a very fundamental view, and it's not punitive, it's not punishment, it's not reward. There's no such thing in Buddhism. It's practical. So the answer to your question is yes, of course. Everything is. Wouldn't even arise in your mind if you hadn't thought it before. Wouldn't even arise in your mind if you hadn't done it before. This is logic, you know. Are there any other questions there, Mary?
Yes, there's 2 more questions. The first one's from Jenny. Is
Yes.
grief a purely negative emotion in Buddhism?
I understand that. I think there's no equivalent word in the list of Buddhist states of mind, but let's analyze it. I think it's a mixture of several things, Jenny. So I'd say it's a mixture of several things. We use that term. So it seems to me it's a mixture of definitely attachment, because we only suffer on this planet because we have attachment. Attachment, I mean, it's multifaceted, but attachment is this kind of emotional hunger in us that's always wanting something more, that always, irrationally relies on something more, always hungry for something. It's coming from an unhappy place in all of us, and we've all got it. It's just join the universe. So when you lose your beloved, when your beloved leaves you or dies, of course, there'll be incredible sadness because attachment has been thwarted. This is absolutely natural. Absolutely, there's also, because there's a close connection. You have grief at the loss of a close person, isn't it? So that's because of the karmic connection between you two, whether it's your poodle or your husband. You've got a karmic connection, a history with that person from the past. So because of that connection and the attachment, of course, there'll be this incredible sadness and this sense of loss, sense of something out of you has been ripped out, you know. And then also just be playing, that's an aspect of sadness, which has also got an aspect of aversion. And it's just simply because it could be compassion as well. I mean, Dalai Lama, when he talked about his mother dying, he was in tears. That's not suffering for him. He's got compassion. So when he thinks of that person, so grateful for what she did for him, his tears came. But it wasn't suffering for him, and it wasn't grief, you'd say. It didn't last. But for us, if it lasts, this grief, that's mainly because it's attachment. This constant sense of loss, feeling like some part of you has been ripped out all the time, thinking about this person, all the time sad and depressed. That's definitely because of attachment. So we've got to look into it and be more analytical, you know, because each person had to be slightly different. Jenny. What else there, Mary?
Justin has a question. Justin from Oklahoma. Is all physical illness caused by our minds? If not, is it just some, how can we discern the difference?
I understand, yeah. There's 2 things involved always in everything in Buddhism, in the analysis in the Four Noble Truths. There are 2 main causes of anything we experience, whether it's happiness or suffering. 2 main causes. Main causes. There are hundreds of various conditions that have to come together to produce cancer, let's say. So the Buddha's concern is the main causes, because they're the ones, the root of the problem or the root of the happiness, and they're the ones we can fix if there's a problem. So let's say cancer, simple example of cancer, or anything like getting a skin rash, anything that's called sickness, where the body gets messed. Now, it's particularly helpful to understand the Vajrayana system, which is the Tibetan medical, is based upon the Tibetan medical system is based on, which is a bit similar to the Chinese Ayurvedic one, you know. And this system says that we've got these different levels of physicality. We've got the gross body and the gross consciousness, which is our senses. Then we've got subtle consciousness, which is all our mental states, all our thoughts and feelings and emotions. They're more subtle, and they are linked inextricably with this subtle wind energy, because this is the physical world. The Vajrayana model of the universe says that the physical world is made of the 4 elements. I mean, in the Western world, we used to think that, but now we have all these other elements. This is still a valid system for them, for the Tibetans, for the Indian, for the Buddhist view. So anyway, in this subtle body, we've got this subtle nervous system, and coursing through all these channels are this subtle wind energy, or prana. And all our different states of mind are inextricably linked to these. So as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, in the Kala Chakra Tantra, there are these detailed descriptions of the intimate relationship between internal and external energy. Internal is mind. External is the body. So for example, he said, if you've got angry thoughts, which is subtler mind than the senses, that because it's linked to those wind energies, it automatically pollutes those wind energies automatically, as well as programming your mind with anger, so that eventually karmically results in sickness. So everything that we do that's called negative, anger, neurosis, jealousy, all the unhappy states of mind, because they're neurotic and they're all based in the ego grasping, the root delusion, they are delusional thoughts. They pollute the mind and they pollute the physical energy, which eventually ripens as getting sickness. And in turn, even further impacts upon the external world and causes the environmental problems like, earthquakes and pollution. This is long term. We're talking thousands of lifetimes here. But it all comes down to the mind. Everything starts with the mind. So in this life, let's say you get cancer. So first of all, let's say you got born to a mummy who's got the genetic tendency for cancer, let's say, however it works. So it's true your mother had those genes and she gave you those genes, it's true, but she doesn't give you cancer. What happens is this: due to your karma with that mummy from past lives, you get born to her, and because you have got the tendency to kill, or the past karma of killing, one of your karmic results of any actions is called environmental. So that will cause you to be born to a mummy with genetic tendencies to get cancer. You get the body from the mother, but the fact that you get that mother is because of your own past killing. So everything comes down to the mind, from the right back to the source. Everything is the mind. But the sickness is still sickness. It can be caused by the bad weather. You can get a cold. That is still fact. One of the causes is the bad weather. But finally, the fact that you've got the tendency to get sick in the bad weather, that comes down to your mind. Everything comes to the mind. The mind is the cause of the entire universe for the Buddha. Of course, it's not evident just by saying those words. You've got to think it all through. But that's the analysis, There's no creator, there's no good luck and bad luck, and it's not merely the physical. Mind is the source of everything, finally. I hope that helps. What else?
Nina has a follow-up question. How about homosexuality, being satisfied with the bodily shape, gender, but attracted to same-sex persons?
What's the question, please?
Nina, do you want to unmute, please, and ask the question?
I mean, I can deduce the question, but I'm not going to. I want you to state the question.
Nina, can you please state the question? Okay, I'm not sure. I can reread it. It says, how about homosexuality?
I hear the words. I hear the words. That's not a question. So that's fine. Nina, she might come again and leave with someone else's. And I want to answer Nina, but I want to hear it more precisely as a question. I need to hear her question. I don't want to speculate. So any other questions there, Mary? No. Okay. So when Nina comes again, she'd like to, perhaps she can write it down and tell you, Mary. It's good to get to have a clear question. Okay. So, okay. I'm sure no more questions.
There's another question. It
Good.
says from Mudit, what exactly do you mean when you say the mind?
Thank you very much. Okay, the Buddhist view of the mind, the word mind, or first of all, the word mind is synonymous with the word consciousness in Buddhism. They're used differently, but essentially it's referring to the same thing. So what it's referring to is the entire spectrum of our inner being. Everything, and first of all, it's not the body by definition for Buddha. It's utterly clear. This is a fundamental thing to start with as your hypothesis. Mind is not physical. So mind is your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your unconscious, your subconscious, your psychosis, your bliss, your love, your compassion, your intelligence, your concentration, all the aspects of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, unconscious, subconscious, instinct, intuition. This is mind. It's your mind. It does not come from mummy and daddy. It is not a function of the brain. Brain plays a role. I'm not trying to insult the neuroscientists. I would say the best way to put what the brain is, certainly at the grosser level of mind, the way Buddhism's talking, the brain is a physical indicator of what is going on in your mind. That's a good way to put it. So mind is not the handiwork of a creator. It does not come from parents. This is like ridiculous for the Buddha. Mind is totally personal. It's yours. So where did all these thoughts and feelings of this moment come from? Guess what? The previous moment of mind. Where did those thoughts come from? The previous moment of mind. Where did those thoughts come from? The previous moment of mind. And the view of karma would say, this is a natural law for the Buddha, that everything we ever think and do and say programs our mind, programs us with a tendency, with an experience similar to it, and even impacts upon the physical, like I said. It's all described in great detail in the literature, So mind, they use a term in Buddhism, Buddhist psychology, mental continuum. These, like your mind is a river of mental moments that goes back and back and back and back and back. So in other words, there you are listening, playing music right now, based upon all these conceptual thoughts in your head called musical theory. Where did all those thoughts and feelings come? Those thoughts about musical theory come from? The previous moment of those thoughts about musical theory. And where did they come from? The previous moment. At some point when you were 5, where did those thoughts come from? From the tendency to do those things. Where from? From having played piano before. So everything is like that. The karmic process is the process that goes on in the mind, and it's a natural law. No one runs it. It's not punishment. It's not reward. So mind isn't the body. It's not the handiwork of a creator or someone else. For the Buddha, this is the weirdest idea. You cannot get mind, anger, or love or compassion from anybody else. It comes from your own love and compassion, your own anger, and you go back and back and back. That's the general idea of Buddhism. And the Buddha's view is we can change the mind. It's our mind. We can change it. We can mold our mind into any shape we like. I hope that helps. Anyone else? Nina went away, I think.
Nina, English is her second language, and so she's having a little bit of a struggle formulating the question, but she wants to ask the question.
Good. Fantastic.
But it might not happen in this class.
No, we'll try, Nina. Just say what you want, Nina. Don't worry. Just turn it into a question, Nina. Just put, instead of what about, just say what is, the karma of or something. Say it like that, Nina. Then we can hear it. What else? So it's interesting. I remember hearing His Holiness the Dalai Lama saying in teachings about the mind, he says, we can talk all these words. We can say all of these things about the mind. We need to be theoretically accurate. We can begin to recognize the feeling of anger, the feeling of love, but actually to really have a direct experience of your own mind, because mind is not physical. It's a pretty subtle thing. And it's not until we're really advanced that we directly experience our own actual mind. But all we can do is start somewhere. And the body is a good indicator for us. If the brain is an indicator of what's going on in the mind, well, the entire body is. If you see me shouting, somehow that's an indicator there's anger in my mind, right? Same thing. So we've got to go by what we've got, But eventually, even in daily life, we've got to learn to go beyond the body, to listen to the thoughts deeper down before the body tells us. If I swear to you, if we can develop this skill, even a little, to listen to what's happening in the thoughts underneath, quietly, before they get to the surface, 99% of the people who kill themselves wouldn't kill themselves. 99% of the people who have wars and murder and kill and steal and lie wouldn't do that. I mean, there's more to it than that. But just forget about, because we follow our tendencies. We follow our tendencies. And that's because we believe, because I feel it, because it's instinctive. Mummy didn't teach me to be angry. It must be natural. So you follow it, and then you think it's right. So this is not an easy job. Well, if you factor in especially the programming from the past, this is huge, and why that fellow on death row? He thinks of torture all the time. His mother did not teach him. So no wonder we're puzzled in the West. Where's that come from, Past karma. It's the only way to hypothesize it. We can't see that yet until we're clairvoyant, and we can be clairvoyant when we've got single-pointed concentration. The tools are all there. So, got to hypothesize all this. So knowing your own thoughts, knowing your own tendencies, that's what being a Buddhist, that's the work, the basis of the work you do on yourself, And the mind's not set in stone, in spite of feelings. Yes.
Venerable, there's a question from Jenny.
Okay.
If someone has died from cancer at a young age, it feels difficult to accept that it's their karma.
Why is that, Jenny? Why? Talk to me, people. You're not talking to me today. You're sending notes instead. Have a conversation with me. Where's Jenny? Come on, Jenny, talk to me, sweetheart. I can't see Jenny.
Jenny, if you could please unmute. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Talk to me, honey. Why is it difficult to bear?
Well, in my case, it was my husband who died of cancer, and I guess it just feels like, then it's sort of like his fault if I'm saying
right. Okay, so what are you so you're still alive, right?
Yeah.
Aren't you? So then Jenny, so then exactly the same logic. Why you are still alive is because of your past karma of non-killing. So is that fair or not fair? Well, I mean, because no one's doing it to, and I know your point. This is how we think of karma. We hear it as like punishment, but there's no punishment in Buddhism because there's no one to punish. It's like if you eat sugar and then get a belly ache, you're saying it's kind of, it's just a natural law. It's not blame. It's not reward. Everybody's in the same boat. We've all had our mind go back and back and back and back and back since beginningless time. We've all done millions of negative things. We've all done millions of good things. We all experience happiness. We all experience suffering. All this is Buddha's analysis of what causes happiness and what causes suffering. And the point in Buddha's view is it's not punishment from the outside. It's not accidental. It's not kind of random. Everything comes from what we've done in the past. So we can hear this. What I'm getting at, Jenny, I know your point utterly, sweetheart, is that when we start to take this view, if we choose to, no one says we should, then it shows us that we are the boss and therefore we can change, And there's more to it than just merely that. But everything that happens, we root it back to the mind, all the good as well, all the happiness, all the kindness, every single thing that's happened to your husband that ever happened to him that was good. People were kind to him. He was a loving person. He was compassionate. People who were good. That's all the fruit of his virtuous karma as well. Karma is this natural law that runs everything. In other words, the law of botany refers to the weeds and the flowers. You got the idea a little bit what I'm meaning? A little bit?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But
Thank
of course,
you.
your heart is broken because he was your husband, for goodness sake.
Yeah, I think it's just difficult I need to think about it a bit more.
Of course, darling, of course you do. But when did he die, sweetheart?
Last July.
So you've still so much suffering for you, right? Is it?
Yeah, and I mean, we were together for more than 20 years, so
Right.
it's a long time.
Of course, sweetheart. And did he suffer or did he die? Did he die peacefully? Was he suffering when he died?
Very peacefully, actually. Yeah.
And
So
how
everything.
did he have a view about the world that helped him deal with it, or how did he think about it? What was his view?
Well, back like when we first got together about 20 years ago, we were both quite into Buddhism, and
Yes.
then I think we sort of still kept some of the philosophy, but we didn't really practice Buddhism on a daily basis necessarily.
Yeah. What tools did he use in his own mind to help him deal with this? And also what tools did you use in your mind to help you deal with this? Because the reality is you're just one example of millions of people. This happens to all of us. So it's very interesting to talk about it. How did he cope with it? What was his way of thinking about it, Jenny?
Well, he was kind of very much accepting that,
Yeah.
if there was nothing that the treatment could
Yes.
do, then he sort of felt that he just kind of made his peace with it. And
I understand.
yeah, he just didn't want to die in pain. So in a way, he kind of did get what he wanted in that sense, which kind of gives me comfort because
I bet it did. Were you with him when he died, sweetheart?
yeah, at least we were together, and
That was,
yeah, he wasn't in pain.
And how did you cope with it? And how are you coping with it? I'm not asking you to accept the Buddha's view. You don't have to think about it like that if you don't want to. So what are you feeling? How do you deal with what's in your mind in relation to this?
Well, I think I'm sort of, I guess I've come back to the Buddhist teachings because I find that it does help me. It gives me
Good.
kind
Something-
of more peace of mind.
Yes, exactly, Jenny.
And
I mean, and one of the things that's interesting, I mean, you tell me about this, it all sometimes sounds a bit shocking, but one of the major ones, we all know, don't we, that one of the Buddha's fundamental teachings is about the reality that everything changes. And we know this so theoretically, don't we? But of course, because it was your husband, because he was young, you might have had the theory, oh, well, we could all die at any time, but it's always shocking when it happens, isn't it? But the point is, Jenny, this is one of the starting points, they say, the Buddha's teachings, if we really understood that everything really is impermanent, and we start to realize that each of us will die and we don't know when, then the wake-up call from that is what gives us so much sense of urgency to not waste our life, to make the most of our life while we're here, Jenny, so for our own sake and to be useful to others. Do you think like that as well?
yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously over the winter, I've been quite sad and depressed, but I think now I'm sort of feeling like actually life is short and he did want me to make the most of my life. So
There you go, Jenny. Exactly.
Yeah, like I could die at any moment. I could die
No,
tomorrow.
that's the real lesson, sweetheart. That's the real wake-up call. You know, get over your grief and then realize that's going to happen to me. So let me make the most of myself. And then that gives us enthusiasm. You know, Jenny, it really does, darling.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Thank you.
Well done, girl. You keep moving, sweetheart. So good.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Jenny. You be brave as well, darling.
Thank you.
Good, good. What else there, Mary? Anything? Did Nina turn up?
She's going to listen to the remainder of the class and come back next time with
Good, Nina. I want to talk to you, sweetheart. Just, yeah, I'm not trying to make it difficult for you. It's okay. I kind of know. Yeah, okay. So what else is there? What else is there? Anything? Nothing. Okay. So let's go back to the original job. The original job, the bottom line is to distinguish in our mind, moment by moment, between the neurotic, ridiculous, I-based, fear-based, unhappy states of mind and the positive, reasonable, appropriate, valid, useful, beneficial, virtuous states of mind. So even first of all, this distinction, we do not talk like this in modern psychology. It sounds like judgment. We do not think about negative, positive, virtuous, non-virtuous. It sounds too much like religion. We can't stand it. So we have to know what Buddha means by this. Otherwise, we do not understand Buddhist psychology, I promise you. So this is Buddha's entire analysis. It was unique to the Buddhist view of the mind. We all hear, don't we? We read the teachings and we talk about, the Buddhist talks about the 3 poisons. Let's call them the 3 toxic emotions. There's better words for us, more suited to our culture. So what are they? There are thousands of toxic emotions, but they're all narrow. There's a very distinct map of the mind in Buddhism, very clear analysis. So all of the neurotic ones narrowed down, subsumed to the 3, precisely these 3. And they've got a hierarchical relationship. The root one, the root neurosis, delusion, whatever you want to call it, is so primordially deep, so subtle, so instinctive in our bones that we don't even have a name for it. In modern psychology, we wouldn't even give it a name, you know. It's this primordial wrong sense of self that causes us to feel fear, never enough, separate, isolated. But fear is its flavor, and it's mostly like a sleeping lion. That fear sometimes is some people have rampant fear the whole time, literally shaking with fear. That's when it's really strong. But most of us is just like a sleeping lion, but it informs the other 2 and the other thousands. So the main voice, this one is, the root one is known colloquially as ego grasping. It's this primordial panic-stricken sense of I, and it's in the center of our mind. Its main voice is I want, I need, I'm missing something. Attachment is this emotional hunger that's dissatisfaction, never have enough, never do enough, never get enough, no matter how much my boyfriend tells me he loves me, never enough, always dissatisfied, which is so sad. Lama Zopa says this is the main suffering of the Western world. Deep, primordial dissatisfaction. And when it's really strong, it's I am not enough. And you know what we call that? Self-hate. Then it gives this emotional, this dissatisfaction gives rise to this thing. Because I'm not enough and don't have enough, of course, it gives rise to hankering after something, looking for something like a vampire out there, the objects of the senses, such that when I get it, it'll fill up the gaping hole. Then when we get it, like the boy, the attachment, the main voice, exaggerates. So Panos, at the age of 6, seeing this shape on a poster, due to past imprint with his habit, exaggerates ridiculously. His attachment exaggerates ridiculously that girl shape. So then all his little body goes berserk, you know, and his mind gets all excited. And then you think about it all the time. That's one of the functions of attachment. You think about it all the time. You're analyzing, thinking about it, wanting it, imagining it, getting it, trying to get it. Like poor friend on death row, he thinks about torture all the time. He's attached to torture. Why? From habit. from past lives. His mother didn't teach him. So attachment is always thinking about it, always wanting it, and always feeling dissatisfied. So you've got to get it, So then the attachment gives rise then to the getting of the object, and then the expectation of the happiness that will come, which does come, but only temporarily. Then it stops. Then we're hungry again. And this is attachment, and it's just underneath. That's pretty primordial. Ego grasping is even more primordial, but this one's just there instinctively driving us every second, driving us. We're not conscious of it. Just the feeling, the aching feeling is there, So then when attachment, so basically to be really brutal about it, this attachment, its main trip is this frantic hunger, frantic need, desperate neurotic need to get only the nice things. You can only cope with the nice things. The nice sound, the nice smell, the nice taste, the right shape, the right words. And of course, the nice things for each of us means what I want. So the really brutal way of putting what attachment is the junky inness that only wants what I want. And then what happens when you don't get it? This happens 1,000 times a day. That gives rise to the third of these toxic emotions, which is aversion. And that the volatile expression of that is anger. The milder levels of that are depression. Irritation, annoyed, frustration. Every day, everybody has that. And we never pay attention because we don't think it matters, but that's anger. And then finally, despair and depression. All the other neuroses are rooted in these three. So this is incredible analysis. It seems almost too simple. Look at the psychiatric volumes in the West. Look at the psychological systems. There are hundreds, thousands of new things every day, new findings of another mental illness, These are all our mental illnesses. These are our mental illnesses. Ego grasping, attachment, and aversion. It sounds so simple, but they're primordially deep. So to unpack and unravel them is not an easy job, but it's doable. This is the job of being a Buddhist. And all the others are variations of those, the jealousy, the arrogance, all the other dramas, So we have to distinguish these from the virtues. So what are the virtues? Love. What's love? May you be happy. A delight in someone else's happiness. Compassion. What's that? May you not suffer. Empathy with someone else's pain. And the key, and compassion, kindness, generosity. We know these words. So what is the difference technically, and eventually we'll see it experientially, between these two kinds of minds? This is the point. The neurotic ones, we know this. How do they feel? Absolutely horrible. Look when you're last depressed, anxious, hungry with frantic attachment, jealous, anxious, paranoid, aggression, arrogance. Look how you felt. It was absolutely like a nightmare. Forget what you did to other people. Look at the feelings. It's so blatantly obvious that it's deeply disturbing. One of the terms they use is disturbing emotion. Guess what? It's absolutely horrible. We know this, but the problem, like I said before, is it's his fault. I'm allowed to be anxious. Look what he's doing. This is the nightmare. We know it's horrible. I'm allowed to be angry. It's like saying you're allowed to stab yourself. Yeah, you are, but how stupid. So what's the difference between these and the virtues? Check the last time you felt when you felt spacious, kind, forgiving, loving, generous. There's an openness. I mean, this is literal. When you're caught up in the miseries, this is the way about ego. You're locked inside yourself. There's little suffering, poor little self-pity me in there. You're locked inside yourself. You can't see past your own nose. The whole world out there is like separate and horrible or whatever. You're locked inside yourself, set in stone. But then when you've got these positive qualities, you're reaching out to others, literally, because these are rooted in interdependence. Virtues are valid because they're rooted in interdependence. The delusions are not because they're rooted in the wrong view of a separate, self-existent me. This is not religion. This is psychology. We have to recognize this. So when we know that anger makes me miserable, forget about what it does to others. This is why Buddha's the very first level of practice is to start to realize how you suffer because of your anger, your depression, your jealousy. You are the one who suffers. Don't be guilty. Have compassion for yourself, please. This ought to be enough to give up delusions that it causes us suffering. Depression breaks our heart. But even with depression, we say, oh, it's not my fault. It's my chemicals, Anger's not my fault. So we stay paralyzed if we can't take responsibility. Not out of blaming yourself, but out of realizing you can do something about it. That's compassion for yourself, I promise. Then you'll start to recognize the distinction between, but it's hard. Look at love and attachment, for example. These are the classic example. If I'm in love, let's say, where's my boy today? I don't know, Justin will do. You look like a boy. Let's say I'm in love with Justin. We all know this intimately. I've got love and I've got attachment. They are so completely different. They're like, as we say in English, they're like chalk and cheese. They look the same, but they're completely different. But this is the revelation. So attachment is this hunger in me, this emotional hunger. And what does hunger mean? When you're missing something, isn't it? So this is why attachment is a symptom of a very unhappy person. We're all the same. So attachment is this emotional hunger. I'm not enough. This handsome boy comes along and I glom onto him, and my attachment just makes up this fantasy. We're going to be together until we're 80. He's totally divine. He's completely perfect. He'll make me happy. All these words we think. And so frantic and grasping. He looks handsome, perfect. Everything about him is a complete fantasy we make up. Now I've got that attachment. Now that's the vampire in me. If I didn't have any love, I'd eat him up for breakfast and spit out his bones and go get another Justin. But luckily I have some love and some compassion. They temper my attachment. But we don't see the difference. So what's love? Love is a virtue. It's related to Justin. It's not just I. It's may you be happy, Justin. I empathize with his suffering. I'm kind, I'm generous, I'm loving. I think of him. I put up with his snoring because I love him. So that's what love is virtuous. But we assume that love and attachment go together. And for us, they do. We only have love for those who are attached, we're attached to. We only are attached to those we love. So we assume they're together. They are absolutely separate. This is really hard to see. That's why if the relationship's going to work, if in the beginning I'm totally got this fantasy, then the expectations of my attachment are like a vampire. He has got to be perfect. And he dare do nothing less than everything every second to make me happy. Look what happens when he starts not to make me happy. I'm going to get angry and upset and jealous and blame him. Then before you know it, I'll chuck him out. Or he'll kill me, one or the other. So what will make the relationship worthwhile is that I practice patience. Don't believe in my attachment. Don't believe in my anger. Don't be quiet. Don't shout words all the time. Forgive him, love him, be kind, be reasonable. That's when the relationship is worthwhile. A relationship works because of love and compassion and kindness, not because of attachment and anger. That's the one, they destroy a relationship. So we have to see the difference. But then it's impossibly hard because we assume they're the same. They're completely different conceptual thoughts. But they're all tangled together like a big soup, you know. So again, theoretically, the job is not complicated, but the doing of it is difficult because of our ancient habits. Believing in it's all the body, believing it's his fault, believing it's set in stone. There's a series of these reasons why this job is so difficult. So it takes time, you know. Time to go home. All right, people, food for thought. Keep moving, never give up. Keep listening. And the thing is, like anything, if you like mathematics, you need to study it. If you like music, you need to study it. If you like Buddhist psychology and you want to be your own therapist, I'm sorry, you've got to study it. Don't just sit down and cross your eyes and whatever you do. No, you close your eyes and cross your, not your fingers, you cross your legs. If you don't just sit down and kind of hope something will happen. That's mysterious nonsense. You've got to squeeze your brain and study it. These words that I'm saying here, I'm not making them up. I'm using my way of saying it. But every word I'm saying is valid Buddhist psychology. Okay, you people. Keep going, people. Never give up, everybody. Much love. Janchub. Semchog Rinpoche, Make Panam Keguchi, Kepanyampa, Mepa Yangong Negongde, Pubasho, Gewa Din, Yudu Dag, Lama Sange Drugyone, Drawa Tekyang Malupa, Dehi Sala. Gurpa Shog. Okay, honeys. Much love from Santa Fe.